Wall Street analysts have coined a new term called the taco trade. They're saying Trump always chickens out on your tariff threats, and that's why markets are higher this week. What's your response to that?
I kick out?
Chicken out.
Oh, and then I chicken out. I've never heard that. You mean because I reduced China from 145% that I set down to 100 and then down to another number? And I said you have to open up your whole country. And because I gave the European Union a 50% tax tariff, and they called up and they said, please, let's meet right now. Please, let's meet right now.
At a press conference, Trump was asked about the hot new acronym that's buzzing around Wall Street, TACO. TACO stands for Trump Always Chickens Out, and the term taco trade refers to Trump's tariffs. You'll notice, by the way, that Jeanine Pirro is standing behind Trump. This press conference occurred during her swearing-in ceremony because she is now our new acting attorney general. How fun for us. Anyway, here's more of Trump's response to the taco trade question.
And I said, okay, I'll give you till July 9. I actually asked them, I said, what's the date? Because they weren't willing to meet. And after I did what I did, they said, we'll meet anytime you want. And we have an end date of July 9th. You call that chickening out? Because we have $14 trillion now invested, committed to investing when Biden didn't have practically anything. This country was dying. You know, we have the hottest country anywhere in the world. I went to Saudi Arabia. The king told me. He said, you got the hottest we have the hottest country in the world right now.
I didn't realize that people were worried that the country would not survive under Biden. There was a lot to worry about back then, but I'm just not sure that that was part of it. I know that people are worried about the state of democracy now under Trump. I also know that there seems to be obvious reasons as to why people might feel that way. For example, the president completely disregarding Supreme Court rulings, and the president appointing Fox News hosts in top cabinet positions, and the president joking, supposedly, about serving a third presidential term. Anyway, here is more from Trump.
6 months ago, this country was stone cold dead. We had a dead country. We had a country people didn't think it was going to survive, and you ask a nasty question like that. It's called negotiation. You set a number. And if you go down, if I set a number at a ridiculous high number, and I go down a little bit, they want me to hold that number, 145% tariff. Even I said, man, that really got up. You know how it got? Because of fentanyl and many other things, and you added it up. I said, where are we now? We're at 145%. I said, whoa, that's high. That's high. They were doing no business whatsoever, and they were having a lot of problems. We were very nice to China. I don't know if they're going to be nice to us, but we were very nice to China. And in many ways, I think we really helped China tremendously because, they were having great difficulty because we were basically going cold turkey with China. We were doing no business because of the tariff, because it was so high. But I knew that. But don't ever say what you said. That's a nasty question.
I hate that word, and he uses it all the time. It was only okay when Miss Jackson said it, but coming from him, it makes my skin crawl for some reason. Also, the reporter isn't the one who came up with the TACO acronym. It's reasonable for him to have been asked about it. But these are the kind of responses you get when you have a president who is so emotionally unintelligent that he can't handle criticism, which, by the way, isn't a great characteristic in a leader of any kind. Still, he did respond, defending his actions and defending his own reputation as a master deal maker and negotiator. It's all a part of the process, he's saying, and we all need to be better at trusting his process. I do think it's interesting that he's demanding that China opens up its whole country because, for one, I'm not sure we are in any position to demand much of anything from China, and to that point, he did capitulate quite a bit in his so-called negotiations with them. Also, China has historically not been an open country, and historically they have plenty of reasons to be wary of the world outside of its own borders. I'm not saying I agree with the ways that they choose to operate on the world stage, but China's going to do what it wants, with or without our permission or cooperation. But while Trump's response felt a little bit rambly, it wasn't the worst public appearance we've seen from him, not even recently. Several recent public appearances with our aging president, who was the oldest president to be inaugurated last January, have called his mental cognition into question.
It didn't work out too well, but that doesn't work out too well. I must tell you, a lot of trophy wives, doesn't work out. But it made him happy for a little while at least.
Now, experts are saying that his general rambling and his hard-to-follow streams of consciousness are indicators that he is experiencing mental decline. The timing for this could not be worse for Trump and Republicans, as the Trump administration is currently seeking a congressional probe into Joe Biden's mental state while he was the president. I'm not sure why they're worried about that, though, since Joe Biden is no longer our president or our anything. To his credit, Biden stepped down, maybe a little later than most of us would have liked, but he did, and he's dealing with cancer now. The only ones still mad about Joe Biden are Trump and his weirdly zealous supporters. From the Daily Beast, Dr. Jennifer R. Murciecka, professor of communications and journalism at Texas A&M University, told the Daily Beast that the president's communication patterns could be a cause for concern. His lack of focus makes it seem as though he's experiencing cognitive decline, that his brain is not well disciplined, and he's unable to maintain a thought and carry it through to a logical conclusion. Dr. Murciecka is notably not a speech pathologist or aging expert, but she is an expert on speeches and rhetorical strategy. She said, Trump sees himself as someone who is unscripted and not teleprompter. He likes to brand himself as a truth teller who can and will say anything that comes to mind. Unfortunately, that makes his speeches difficult to follow as he digresses from thought to thought, seemingly connecting ideas at random. Trump's doctors, of course, insist that he is in peak physical and mental health, which is obviously not true to anyone who just looks at him. And he now feels like a has-been who just defaults to old, stale talking points, assuming that they'll still work for him the way that they used to. But after that disastrous address to the West Point graduates, where he talked about drag shows and trophy wives and the great late Alphonse Capone, it's hard to imagine that anyone isn't embarrassed to still be supporting him. Now, usually, I wouldn't try to make much of a point about Trump's cognitive decline because while it's been evident, in my opinion, for a while, people still voted for him in 2024. People continue to support him. So whether or not he's experiencing cognitive decline sort of doesn't matter unless or until it does. Joe Biden still has supporters despite his apparent cognitive decline, and I don't mean people who were just reluctantly supporting the party or not supporting Donald Trump. I mean, he still had people who were happy and excited to vote for him in 2024. But discussions of his cognitive decline ultimately led to him dropping out of the presidential race. And regardless of whether or not he would have defeated Trump had he stayed in the race, whether or not it was ideal the way it was done, whether or not Kamala Harris was the right candidate, Joe Biden was not a fit presidential candidate. He would not have been a fit president. But all of that, I think, could have been said about Trump going back to the election. He was already seen slurring his words in press conferences. He was already speaking incoherently and rambling. Perhaps we as a people have just forgotten what it's like to have leaders who are actually eloquent, but we need to remind ourselves that these men are not actually fit to be leaders. We need to stop making excuses for them and have some self-respect and remember that we deserve to have leaders who are competent and can communicate a lucid thought. The president is not supposed to be the everyman. I don't need to have a beer with my president. I need the president to do a good job at being a president. If Trump was just a normal man interviewing for a job, he wouldn't be fit to be a manager at a Starbucks. The difference as to why Joe Biden stepped down and Trump did not is because people in Biden's inner circle spoke up. His own supporters spoke up and told the Democratic Party that we deserve better. Trump supporters would never. The Republican Party would never. They have been praising the emperor's new clothes for years, and they're not going to stop anytime soon. Trump will have to be bullied or litigated so hard before he steps back from this role, and even then, even if that happens, he's still going to say that he was a victim of Trump derangement syndrome. The Republicans as a party, both Republican voters and leaders, will not remove him because they cannot even criticize him publicly, and that is not how democracy is supposed to work, at least not in this country. All right, that's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks.